everybody. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Two Preachers in the Popcorn Box podcast. I am Brian, your host, and with me, my co host.
DT in the building.
What's going on, everybody? Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Today is Saturday, the second Saturday in October 2020.
Right.
Again, so if you are watching this podcast, you are most likely seeing us either on Facebook or on YouTube. Please make sure that you are subscribing to our YouTube page as well. We want to grow our numbers there, as well as if you're listening audibly, you are listening to where all podcasts can be found. And for that, I say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So today's movie is Black and Blue. It is a movie that's kind of heavy, but we're going to try to make it as serious yet as light as possible, because it comes with with something that it's something we got to talk about, but
Right.
it's something I don't want us to be super heavy, but hey, we're just gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it. So, Black and Blue. It was recorded or filmed. I think it's in 2019. It stars Tyrese Gibson. Um, and I am drawing a blank on the lady's name, the female lead on the show. But it was filmed in New Orleans. If you guys heard our episode about Project Power, Derek was extremely excited about this particular movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we love New Orleans. We are both Louisiana guys. I've been here since 2011, and Derek was bred here. So listen, this is a movie that is kind of near and dear to our heart. So the movie opens up actually with one of my favorite rap artists, um, "Welcome to America" by Lecrae. When I was in the
Right.
theaters and I
Right.
heard it for the first time, I was so excited. I was like, "Yes,
Yeah.
that's Craig. Welcome to America." It perfectly fit
Yeah.
the tone of the movie, and so from the jump, we have the main character, Officer Alicia West. She's doing what most Black people do. We take runs around neighborhoods. We try to be fit as best as we can. And so she's profiled, although she's an officer, right? The cops roll up on her, and the first thing that the cop says is, "What are you doing in my neighborhood?" Right?
Right.
Um, if you go back in history and you kind of study redlining and you study all of the segregational tactics that our country has set, um, they purposely blocked off certain parts of the country to us so that we couldn't live and we couldn't belong, right? And so when I saw that scene, that's the first thing I thought about. I was like, why would you think that a black woman, first of all, a black woman running in the neighborhood was out of place?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Um, and so all of a sudden, though, the tone changes when they realize not only is she black, but she's also blue. She's also a cop. Um, and so, again, I didn't want to be heavy from the jump, man, but
Get in.
it's
Get in. Get in.
crazy. It's crazy how um, we are. And there's a quote in this movie from one of the other characters, Tyrese's character by the name of Mouse. He says that um, we are animals out here to these cops. They don't see us as human beings. Derek, first of all, did you serve in any capacity when you were in the military?
Yes.
You did.
I was in for 10 years.
Okay. Okay. Um, what type of, if you can tell us, I guess, on your background and your training and um, in how you deal with people, and kind of compare that to what the police officers were trained to do or are trained to do.
I mean, they profiled her off
Mm,
jump. I mean, let's just be honest. When you have you know black you know black people and white officers, and let's make this very clear: every person in every uniform is not a bad apple, and every
mhm,
black person that's dressed normally is not a bad apple. We treat each other based upon what we've been taught how to respond and treat other people. But as far as me being in military, me being working with different agencies as far as policing and whatnot, um, it is a challenge in multiple ways when it comes to the uniform that I put on and the responsibilities that I had. That
mhm,
again, as far as I was not raised to see color. I was raised to see character.
mm,
So
okay.
to answer the question would mean I would have to uh, put myself in different perspectives in order to answer it without missing a beat, which is going to be difficult because, again, I can only speak from the perspective that I was in. I didn't see color, tried not to see color, was taught I wasn't concerned about color. Again, I was only concerned about the character of the person and how I was treated. And then
Hmm.
on top of that, I was raised to not try to treat people like they treated me.
Okay.
So it's a very this movie is gonna hit on a lot of bases. Oh, but to be in the capacity of serving, I didn't take the authority I had to use it to my benefit. To say all that, to put that in a nutshell. But
Yeah.
again, that goes back to what I said earlier. Teaching from your upbringing helps you to address particular things correctly and not allow power or position to make you this egotistical maniac or
Yeah.
controlling individual, or finally I want to use my power to oppress those that I've been taught are different than me.
Right. Right.
So
And so, yeah, that's of course you hit a lot of the different things that we're going to talk about in the episode today. But I guess let's just kind of jump right into um, Deacon. Right. Deacon is a beat cop, just like um, Officer West, but he's tied himself to the um, the drug unit of the Jennings, Louisiana police force, right? And
right,
so he is African American, just like Officer West, just like Alicia. And so you mentioned how you know being taught at an early age kind of builds your character. One of the things, and this is a term that you kind of hear, um, and it's crept up the last couple of weeks. Is that all skin folk ain't kinfolk,
correct, correct,
right?
correct,
And so that's one of the things that kind of struck me was whenever they first meet, and she agrees to do overtime, and she's assigned to Deacon's unit, and so they roll out. And one of the first things that he says is whenever the standard operating procedure of this officer is to wear a body cam. And the
right.
first thing he says is like, "You got to wear that? Like, you really gonna put that on?" And she was like, "You got something to hide?"
Right,
And so that, I think, goes back to what you mentioned about character, about how um, if we are taught foundational truths, then no matter what opposition and pressure from the outside, we have the foundation in these truths and we won't waver from them. And of course, we don't know what situations may have led to Deacon going the
correct,
way he went,
right.
but it's still a choice.
It is.
And
It
it's
is.
still,
It's still a choice. But again, you mentioned something. The latter part of what you said is that we had no idea of what influenced Deacon to be the cop that he was. He was when he was introduced to Officer West, and so He when she introduced herself, there was no handshake, there was no nothing, because
Right.
he treated her, number one, he looked at her as a female. Number two, he looked at her as a rookie. So he looked at her as extra weight. Before he
Mm,
opened his mouth, he looked at her as a liability, a problem,
yeah.
and he treated her like a liability, well, someone like a liability. When they ran up to a scene or pulled up to a scene, it was this fight at the club, and she runs out of the car. What are you doing? What are you doing? Pins the guy up against the wall in this crowd of
Right.
people. And so it gets to the point that she's trying to find this out, find it out. She's not paying attention other than to the threat in front of her, rookie. So he kind of, in his mind, already knew before he got into his car, before he started walking down the hall with her, this is the type of night I'm going to have. And
Yeah.
so his energy was answered by what she did. And
Right.
so, in that response to that, he then had to watch her back. And so again, she was so focused on the first, which was not really a threat, because he was the one that was, it was too mixed up to really determine who was punching and who was doing this, that, and the other. But
True.
when she came in and she addressed what she needed to address, um, a threat came behind her, and again, Deacon, Officer Deacon, or however you want to put his, official title, or whatnot, came in and rescued her without saying a word. But she again didn't know. She was still treating him, and here it is, the very important thing about going in the enemy territory.
Hmm.
When you go with a partner, is you got to be careful who you look at as an enemy. And she didn't feel comfortable in the car with him, and she thought she was going to have to do everything by herself. Because if you pay attention, she stormed out of the car. She didn't wait for any officer. She did what she felt like she needed to do. She addressed what she needed to address. And in doing so, she left herself open to be vulnerable to attack. Pretty much how we do it. We come in and we address particular issues because of what we see, and we're not looking at everything else around us. And she almost got herself eliminated. Again,
Yeah.
rookie move. He treated her
That's
like she was a rookie.
so that's
So,
a really interesting point of view, and actually I caught that like the third or fourth time I watched it. Um, but initially, because because Deacon was suspect of the body cam, that instantly put a red flag in my mind. Okay,
right,
watch Deacon. Something is wrong with Deacon. Something is up with Deacon. Now, if we back just a little bit, whenever the first police scene opens up, um, Alicia meets her partner, and her partner strolls around the neighborhood, and um, they're having a conversation about how things used to be and how things are not that way now, and how there's this one section of the city um, that we don't go into unless there's an
a
issue
blue and
with
truck.
cops.
Yeah,
And so, growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, there were plenty of neighborhoods, plenty of areas that I was told don't go over there.
right,
Like, don't do that. Like, make sure you home by a certain time. You know, if you got business over there, find it in another place in the city. And, you know, while some of that is merited, most of it is based on perception, not experience. And a lot of times, what cops have done in America is that they base all of their interactions with us based on perception and not always experience. And that's, I think, the toughest job of being a cop, because I think that, not every person is a threat, but yet it appears that they perceive people to be a threat without proper due diligence.
right.
And yes, Brittany, and yes, Miss Mitchell, Orange Mound was one of those places back home. But now here's the thing, and then I'm gonna move on. So I thought that Orange Mound was like this really bad place, but when I would go with my dad and go like help work and build, everybody that I met in Orange Mound was nice and was cool. So you
Right.
have this fence around this perception in your mind about how people are. But then when you're met with the reality, you're like, okay, well, shoot, I was wrong for stereotypes, for thinking or having these prejudiced thoughts about people based on what I heard and not what I experienced.
Gotcha.
And that was like my first instinct about that conversation, is because not everybody in the hood is bad. And I think Alicia said something to that effect, that not everybody is bad. There is just this is just a situation that life has dealt them. And you know we can't lose our sense of compassion, and by going the easy route of entitlement. Like, we got
Gotcha.
to have a conversation, man. Like, you can't assume people are one way, and then put this blanket description over people just because you assume that they're a certain way.
Right. Couple of things that you mentioned, want to bring them probably hopefully into a good nutshell.
Hmm.
Um, let's just say this. Being, and I'm not standing up for anybody, but the responsibilities of an officer is to always be involved with every bad apple. And if I'm always involved with bad apples and all the apples look the same, then eventually I'm going to treat every apple I come in contact with the same way as the bad apples I come in contact with.
Right.
But so that's how we, and then let's flip that. If every person
Hmm.
that I've
Hmm.
met is black and bad acting, so every person that every time, no matter what city I go into, the people that I run into, whether they're black, white, green, or yellow, if I went
Yeah.
into a particular group and I get particular treatment, then I'm assuming that all of them act that way because every place I've been treated the exact same way.
Right.
So again, different environments prepare us, not prepare us, but influence us to respond to different stimulus the same way because of what we receive throughout life. Here it is:
Yeah.
police, people of official authority. Again, your job requires you to go into bad neighborhoods with bad people, with bad environments, with bad attitudes. Let's flip that. Let's throw the church in there. We are, we receive bad apples, the bad attitudes, the bad demeanors. Church folk are the worst. Church folk are the worst folk. That's what I've always heard. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
every time we go in this place, the church people are the loudest, or the meanest, or the most inconsistent, or the
You
most
can't
diligent.
trust the preachers.
You can't trust the preachers. You can't trust the choir director. You don't know what they doing. You can't trust. You can't trust. So, I mean, I understand we in black and blue, but that's just I like to broaden
No,
horizons.
let's do it.
Is exceptionally valuable that we have to prune ourselves from the constant influence of negativity so we won't treat everybody the same way. This movie, I love the title. This movie says black and blue, but here it is. I wanted to say this. Things are not always black and white. I mean, things are not always black and blue. They're black and ain't black and white, which means there's some things in the middle that we miss. We only see the black and white, which we miss too many opportunities to conquer so many things. And so it is valuable that this movie teaches us a great lesson in that certain things have not changed.
Yeah.
So, and then here it is. Let's not just label the black and blue issue with the cops.
Hmm.
Let's also go into the area of when they pulled up to the gas station, and then Officer West was speaking to the young boy about
Right.
what type of skateboard you wore. His first response to an officer is that this is mine. So it also teaches us or reminds us that
Yeah.
we've been so much on the defense because how we've been treated like animals. But just
Hmm.
because I've been treated like animals doesn't mean I have to respond like animals. Because his response
Hmm.
could have been good morning and not this, that, and the other. But again, look at his mama. Look what his mama was wrapped up in and involved in. But again, the
Right.
opportunity to change is not in his, at this unfortunate time, in his DNA
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
multiple. And so they looked at a black woman in a uniform as an Uncle Tom, and she was
Oh,
labeled
dang.
that. So,
Yeah.
and then for her to do her job after being labeled and then asking a general question that turned into hostility from a classmate that she had but didn't treat her as such, even when she called her whole name. She's like, I don't know her. I don't know who she is. You
Yeah.
got me mistaken. Because here it is. She didn't want to lose her identity with the ones that she became comfortable with,
Oh, yeah.
which is the local drug dealer, the thugs, because after a period of time involved in those particular, and I don't know how Orange Mound was, but after a while, you become you adapt to the environment that you in order to overcome and not get treated like an animal in your own
Hmm.
environment. Because that's the other thing that we got to look at too. So go
Yeah.
ahead.
So based on recent events, and I have to quote this specifically, based on recent events, you can say Orange Mound is similar to Allendale.
Gotcha.
Very simple. Okay.
Gotcha.
All right. Cool.
Gotcha.
So
So
one
be
thing that yeah. So one thing that my pastor says a lot of times is that we've been conditioned to lose,
wow.
so
Yeah.
we have to be taught how to win. And so when I think about the interaction between um, Alicia West and the child and then his mother, immediately they have this fear of every time that a cop comes to me, they're up to no good. Now, as we see later on in the movie, they have perfect reasoning to do that because even the owner of the market, whenever the cops go in to get some snacks or whatever, he says to the cop, "Hey, are you here about the robbery?" And the guy
Man.
was like, Nah." He was like, "Man, you know what? Don't even worry about it."
Right.
So, you know, it's difficult. You know what? Let me ask this question:
What's up?
How do how should we respond whenever those in authority repeatedly let us down?
That is a very huge question. How do we respond to those that let us down in authority?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's unfortunate because then we feel like we have to take things into our own hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because the lack of response that we receive based upon neighborhood and color.
Yeah.
Um, and so that affects us to the point where we build up a one man army mentality, and it's very difficult to respond to something that you may never get a response to. And so, do you succumb to the environment to become part of it? Because as long as you stay separate in particular environments, you will be a target. You will be hit
Mm,
upon. You will be this, that, and the other. So certain times, in order for you to overcome an enemy, you have to become an enemy. And that's unfortunate, but it's called the way of survival. There is no good way to answer that question, simply
yeah.
because when you don't have the right response, you handle it all the wrong ways, and you take a lot of stuff into your own hands, and your hands stay bloody, your hands stay dirty. You involve yourself with people that get you caught up in particular situations that's kind of deadly, and you
Yeah.
find yourself being in survival mode on a regular basis. So you
Mm,
can't know how to be and become, and that dysfunction becomes your function. Because
yeah.
if you live in it long enough, it's the only way you know how to survive. So now you now receive this survival mentality, and you use that in every environment possible, which now becomes a problem because every environment is not a survival environment. So again, to adequately respond to a question, that when there's no responsible authority, what you do is unfortunately take responsibility in your own hands.
Yeah. And so I think if we that question and your answer honestly is a small microcosm of America, Black America.
Right.
Because there's a section of us that we were told that we're supposed to trust the cops. but yet there's interactions that we have that the cops have proven that they can't be trusted. And so I want to talk about authority, because authority, of course, doesn't just solely belong to police officers. We are given a level of authority as well. Um, and so we have to be responsible with any type of authority that we're given. The one thing that this particular movie shows is that having authority is more about your responsibilities than your rights. Because just because I'm the parent doesn't mean I have to be a tyrant,
Correct.
right? Just
Right.
because I'm a cop doesn't mean that I have to have this forceful demeanor, right? And so, of course, I know different situations, will require different things, but the character of your heart will determine the output of your hands, right?
That's good.
So, it's like, you know, how how does a person like get to the point to where they feel that their authority is the only authority? Like that's the thing that this police department, that the drug unit, eventually they were like, you know what? I have this authority. You don't have any power. I am over you. I control everything. And so you have to do what I say. And it's like, you know, I'm like, man, how does a person get to that? But one thing we know is that power always corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right?
It
So,
does.
mhm,
It does, but multiple number of other things corrupt as well. Greed, lust, envy, strife. Pick one. All of those again introduce, get us caught up, and there's so many, facets to just we're talking about in this movie itself. And there's something else I want to address, and we're gonna jump on the point that you were bringing up. Also, it takes radical people to make radical change when it comes to officers and it comes to the environment that we're a part of. Because here it is, there's a twofold thing: when authority doesn't properly, but we can't trust with, or we cannot trust or rely on authority to respond. It
mhm,
also says that we also can't take responsibility. And I said it earlier, it puts us in a position to take responsibility for our actions, but it takes two different minds in order to overcome that. It takes a mind that has the authority to pull themselves out of we can't go, and it has somebody else in the same, that feels like the authority is never coming to also reach the authority. And it's a very unique partnership that needs to happen in order for things to take place. Because here it is, and I said earlier, every officer is not a bad apple. It's just you have to go through a certain number of people to get to good ones, and then the good ones can do the work that the bad ones refuse to do. And that's what any person, even if you're not an officer, comes to the place when you ran into enough different bad people. When you find the right good person and you work together, you can overcome a lot of adversity when it comes to unresponsive authority. But you
mhm,
have to find the right partnership in order for that to happen and be a progressive move. Because and
right,
now we're transferring over to the influence of the bad, the dirty cops and all this other stuff. That influence is intoxicating. And here it is. If you get the right amount of people, you can build a wall and keep the outside folk from never getting in contact with you.
that's
Because
exactly what happened.
if you notice, that's what happened in the movie. The chief never knew how dirty, the DEA cop was, because he was in flux with the zero, well, not zero, but I can't even think of the name of this character. Mike Collier's character, that was the drug dealer. He was familiar with him. He was familiar with his underlings. There was Zero, who ended up getting killed by the officer. Then you had different other officers that was part of the drug force unit. Then you had officers on the street, and you had different cops. You had enough surrounding you that everything that you did, if somebody followed your narrative, your narrative will be the only way. If you paid attention to the officer that actually killed Zero, he says, "This is what I need you to do." And if you got other people that execute your evil, you will. Unfortunately, they can keep your story the way that it is, and unfortunately, that's the way things are. Is that you
System.
have, or if you get enough people dirty, you can make them do what you want to do. And that was the other thing.
Yeah,
If
blackmail.
you get them caught up in situations and circumstances, I can use what I put in you or on you for my benefit. The trap of the enemy is the exact same way.
Absolutely.
If I get you caught up enough, I can use you for my benefit to make my plot even better, to reach across different boundaries to you, because now you are my eyes and my ears, and you have to answer to me based upon the dirt I've done, you've done. And here it is. When I pay you, I now own you. However that goes about. And so if
Hmm.
I pay you the what I feel like is due to you, or that will keep your mouth shut, or will keep me making you a used tool by me, I will keep doing that. And until you say no, here it is. That's the trap. Even if you say no, I have enough of your past to bury you.
Yeah,
So you got to
yeah,
be it. And again, it makes us. This movie has so many facets. It has to make us particularly careful on how we allow ourselves to get caught up in certain circumstances and situations to now make us one of the bad apples. Because here it is, every person does not always start off as a bad apple.
right,
You're not born a bad apple. You've been
right.
influenced to be a bad apple. And so once your core is dirty, now whatever uniform or whatever position you have or whatever responsibility you have is now just as dirty as your insides, because of the influences again that you've allowed to infest your life. So it's so many things when it comes to and then after a period of time, um Deacon didn't want to be alienated. That was the other thing about the body cam not being on him,
Hmm.
because it's twofold. If I'm doing good cop work, I don't want the dirty cops to know that I'm a good cop.
Oh yeah,
And if
come on,
I'm
man.
doing dirty work, I don't want the clean cops know that I'm dirty. So why do I need a cam to destroy any facets that I have? Because as long as I can control the narrative, I can control who can get in contact with me or who I will and would not be influenced by.
That's interesting because you know how a lot of times, um, whenever we are hanging out with people that hold these things over us or are in the same boat that we are, doing dirt and all of that.
Right.
Many times, if I make up my mind to to change, let's say I decide to go to church, right?
Uh-huh.
Many times I got to sneak off and do that myself because all of this clout that I've built with these other people is more important than risking life by myself away from all of the pressure and the influence and all of that. And so, we have to make that choice, that my personal well-being, my personal character, my personal beliefs and standards are more important than what you are asking me to do. And eventually, that's what you see Officer West do, is that, regardless of all of the corruption that was around her, she never allowed herself to
Right.
bow or to join into what they were doing. All right.
Right.
Yes, sir.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So I want to talk about Mouse, Tyrese Gibson's character.
Yeah, go ahead, get that.
Okay.
I got to get there as soon as you say it. I was waiting. No, go ahead.
All right. So he's interesting to me because um, you could tell one of the most powerful scenes in the movie to me was when he was hiding Officer West after she had gotten shot. And initially, whenever she broke in, he called the cops, right? But you could tell that it hurt him tremendously to do that because he has a built-in distrust of the entire police system, like the entire system. You can tell because whenever the cop, um, you know, put handcuffs on him and had the gun to the back of his head, Tyrese's face perfectly illustrated trauma. Like I felt every, I feel like I was being handcuffed, right? Like I felt that, and the fact that he had to understand that not all cops are bad apples, and that's something that I think um, that we have to do when it comes to our interactions, not only with cops or with people that we perceive to be bad. We have to allow people to show us who they really are, because we make a lot of assumptions a lot of times based on misinformation, based on what someone in that same position does, right? Many times, you hear a lot of people say they don't trust preachers because they always ask for money, or they don't trust, certain big churches because, they think that the church is doing something crazy. And, there are people who literally have blocked a relationship with God based on a perception, not based on an experience. And so we have to stop doing that. We have to be able to investigate a situation on our own, so that we can come to the realization, because eventually, um, he needed to help Officer West in order for both of them to survive. And
Right.
had he, upheld this, staunch belief that all cops were bad, you know, he literally could have died.
Okay. Couldn't
Come on,
wait.
let's talk about it.
With so much, let's just start off with this. All right. Here we go. One, two, three. First of all, it's a grown man with the name Mouse.
Hey,
That's I got to hit you with it. I got to hit you with it. Let's seriously. That's
come on.
within itself. Within itself. Let me explain. I'm gonna hit you. I'm gonna hit you with a bunch of stuff, and prayerfully, I get to every last piece of it. His manhood was castrated. A man called Mouse first, because that's how can you function in the hood with a grown man that was his size and his vernacular, a grown man named Mouse. You
Mm.
cannot take anyone that serious with that name, first of all. Secondly, he was a convicted felon,
Mm-hmm.
taking away any ability he had, because now I can't function as a full man because I can't do particular things because of whatever past I had. And so I don't have transportation. I can
Yeah.
only live so far up the street. This is the only job that I could get, and I don't want to lose it. Now here it is. He didn't see her as a threat to her. He saw her as a threat to lose what he already barely had in his hands. I
Interesting.
can't do this. I can't do this. Is what he was responding to. Most of the time, when men have been castrated, they lose the power to effectively stand and be strong. And here it is, the handcuffing was bringing a complete wall down on him. I'm already a convicted felon. They're already looking for my history to see if I can go back to jail. I'm already in a situation where my life is at risk because of what is taking place. I don't have the power enough. I don't own the store. I work for the store owner.
Mm-hmm.
So many
Mm-hmm.
things that took away. Here it is. The power that he could have as a man no longer existed. And
Wow.
when she came into his life and not only necessarily forced him, but gave him the chance to redeem himself. That's what took
Mm-hmm.
place with Tyrese. That's what happened with himself. So that's what Christ does to every single
Yes,
man.
sir. Yes,
Gives
sir,
us
man.
opportunity to redeem ourselves after the world has done all it could to castrate every single man from every possible angle, from possession to life ability to controlling his own destiny. All of that was taken. In that moment, when I saw Tyrese cry, when I heard his name called his mouth, when he was working for the store owner, and he was
Mm-hmm.
skeptical, a man that big was not controlled and was uncertain about what was going on. He was looking for weapons. to defend himself and unsure of whether or not that he could handle the threat. All of that was in that scene. And it showed that I can't
Mm-hmm.
do this. I am afraid because my power, I don't have any left. I
Yeah,
don't have
man.
anything left. I can't do anything. So that's all I got. But once he's seen, here it is. When I start seeing the change started happening when he saw this lonely woman after she started to tell him. He said, "Aren't you a cop? Shouldn't you
Yeah.
call your
Right.
other cop friends to take
Right.
care of this?" He said, then she hit him with something. They're the ones that's trying to kill me. You can't be here. They're the ones that's trying to kill me. All I need to do is stay overnight. I can't do this. You have to go.
Yeah.
Because he was in fear. It created a fear factor. It was being perpetual. It was perpetual. It was perpetual because the
Mhm.
people that he couldn't rely on, he pushed the button for. The police.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
people he couldn't rely on is I don't have a weapon. I don't have a gun. I don't have a knife. I don't have anything. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
unarmed. I'm uncertain, and I'm in fear. Goodness, all of that is
Wow.
every Christian. When we come out uncertain, how
That's
will my
it,
enemy
man.
protect me? I'm in fear because of what's coming, and I don't have the right weapon. So I'm skeptical about going to the door that I know is open because I told the owner it wasn't secure. So I'm already in an unsecure place. So I'm an unsecure man in an unsecure situation because I'm unsure about everything, and I'm going there hastily, not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was just as startled as she was, again, continuing to feed fear.
Mm.
But when he saw a woman, life in jeopardy, already shot, already in danger, she said, "Do you have a, a needle and thread, sewing kit?" He said,
Yep.
"No." She said, "You got some glue?" He said, "Let me go check." He got the glue back, and he said, "You gonna glue it? Like, is that gonna work?"
Yeah.
Sometimes we look at God and ask him, is that gonna work? That don't look like that's gonna work. And
Yep.
so when
He's
she's
unconventional.
right, it's unconventional. Who's gonna heal a graze, a bullet graze? Who's gonna heal a bullet graze with some glue? So
Yeah,
when
man.
he seen her do that, it started to change him because he knew her circumstances and he knew she was the lesser, and he still began to aid her. You
Yeah.
can't go out there like that.
Right.
And he gave her a hoodie.
Yeah.
So now, listen to it. He became strong enough to give her a covering.
Look at you, preacher. Come on.
I'm just saying, for real. What was that? What was that representative of? He could have gave her a T-shirt. He gave her a whole covering from her hood to her chest to
Mm-hmm.
cover her up, to keep her concealed in the neighborhood, being attacked by the police. And here it is about other people because you finna walk in the neighborhood as a cop, a
Yeah.
wounded cop.
Yeah, man.
So now you're a wounded cop. Now the community can affect you. So she was covered from not only that she was covered from the community, but she was also covered from the other officers to get to her so-called cop buddy or cop friend or her partner. She thought,
Partner. Yeah.
and I love all of that. And so it shows us so many facets when it comes to the particular things in when it comes to the particular aspects of his character and then the transformation that took place, and it was so much transformation in it. But the only thing, and I know we mentioned it, I know we had mentioned it, but we'll get to it about the salted butter, and hopefully we get to that before the end of the podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was so many things that was wrapped up in what happened then. But that was a huge part for me as
Mm-hmm.
far as Mouse's name, the plight of a black man, which is huge, and the transformation of a black man, which was major. And
Listen.
so, and he didn't. And once he thought it was over, that's when she came to his apartment.
Yeah.
So there's so many other things in there, but
Yeah.
I don't want to, I get happy with stuff, but it was significantly major when it came to the particular things of, and not only that, he needed to see a change in his life. He needed to see a change in every aspect of his life to make sure that he could believe in what was going on.
Yeah.
So it was exceptionally significant when it came to Tyrese's problems or identity crisis. That's what I'm gonna
Yeah.
say.
That's good.
Okay,
That's good. That's good.
my bad, my bad.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, no, no. You're good. You're good. You're good. Listen, that your breakdown of mouse from the name to all of the details of that is really really deep. I didn't catch all of that. So when I watch it, so good deal. Good deal. Good deal. All right. So let's kind of fast forward a little bit because I do want to get to my salty butter portion because it was hilarious to me. Um,
Okay,
but so of course we know that the um, narc unit tries to frame um, Alicia for the shooting of the people in the warehouse, right?
right,
And so the main, I guess, uh, gang leader that the cop was working closely with, name is Darius.
yeah,
All right. So
good job.
here's my salty buttered point of view here. I know it's difficult. I know it's difficult to properly um, illustrate what a gangster is supposed to look like, what a gangster is supposed to sound like. I know it ain't easy. I know it ain't easy. But there was a couple of things about Darius' demeanor that I thought was a little bit off. All
Okay,
right.
okay,
Now, um, Louisiana is known for gold teeth. I'm good with it. I didn't have no issues with his gold. I didn't have no issues with the fur in the rain, but the shades, I don't understand. All right. Secondly, okay, and here's my biggest thing. Here's my biggest thing. So, um, after the shootout, at Darius's house, I'm sorry, at Tyrese's or Mouse's house, right?
yeah,
They kidnap Mouse and bring him back to the hood, right?
right, right.
Okay,
Ooh, go
so
ahead.
so now he's being kidnapped. And why is it that they always play the drug kingpin as dumb and slow? Like, why is that? Because he makes a reference in a threatening reference to cut off his ear and calls him Picasso.
Right.
Okay. Secondly, all right, the scene where he's behind the little behind the fence and he's
Mhm.
moving from side to side and he got that little glare like he's supposed to be menacing, but he looks crazy. I think Black Mania, like the portrayal of a black maniac, nobody's figured that out because that was horrible to me. I was like, what are you doing? Right. It was crazy to me. I was like, okay, that is not how because he went from being understated in his anger to extremely violent. And
Right.
I know that people snap like that. I understand that. But it didn't look realistic to me because everything he did was so extreme that I was like, okay, I don't like that. And that's my salty butter, man. I mean, I watched it, but each time I saw it, the look in his eyes as he was going passing through that little fence, looking all crazy with the gold tooth sticking out, it like it drove me, man. It drove me. Okay,
I'm
here we
sorry
go.
that way about Mikey Coulter's position. I still love him as an actor though. He's still a okay.
Oh gosh.
Okay, but here it is. My salty butter part
Mm-hmm.
was Officer Alicia West's response to fear. It was so ridiculously slow and like what was that? Like you it was so amazing that you a cop. You're a cop. You've been to the academy. You know how to
Mm-hmm.
fire. Okay, we got that. And you are prior army, so you know how to handle
Two
yourself.
tours.
Two to it. You should know how to handle yourself in stressful situations. Why are you acting like a deer in headlights when stuff pop off? And the only time you stop acting like a deer in headlights is when all the police came to the apartment complex. But mostly
Right.
throughout the movie, you was acting like your fear controlled you. Okay, I got that. But your hesitation, you should have been shot and killed like 4 or 5 times in the movie. But I got
But
love
listen,
the
it
movie
was
though.
kind of
Love the movie.
strange. It was kind of strange how she killed the guy that shot her, like the bullet. I'm like, oh, you had this whole time and didn't tell nobody.
Right,
'Cause-
right. So I'm just saying, love the movie, one of the best.
yeah,
But that whole and I would say that I could be directing. I have no idea. I can blame anybody for any particular thing. But her response was just unnerving to me. I'm like, what in the world? And I was so done for certain scenes. Again, I'm not knocking the movie.
yeah.
I'm not knocking the movie.
No,
Not
I
knocking the
got it.
movie. Certain scenes, I'm like, are you serious? What are you? So my bad, my bad. That was now I ain't had I never got the opportunity. And so, and your missus said she had to gain confidence. She was already had 2 tours. She was a
Yeah.
rookie cop. She ain't brand new to a threat, but you act like you didn't got to New Orleans and you would have lost your mind. What? So that and
So
so okay, let me say this before you get
okay.
just to bring that home. Let me bring that home. It taught me that we have to learn to overcome our response to fear because hesitation could breed destruction or
Hmm.
damage or
Hmm.
delay and
That part.
put your life on the line. So we have to overcome it in order to because it's not threats are not going to stop, not from the enemy.
Right.
So it requires us to pull out of the emotional response to it because that whole lag in resisting and when Mouse was leaving and it's like you just looked at him get pulled up, the car pulled up, and
Yeah.
you watched him get in the car and you slowly called his name after it pulled off. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My bad. I was
It's
trying to bring out.
crazy.
Go ahead.
Listen, when I watched that scene again today, I was like, I think this is the scene he gonna talk about. Oh, yeah. No, it's so I mean, sometimes things can be included in movies that only add, to fill in a plot line, but
Right.
should have more emphasis in the movie. So I think, they needed to, say where she was for those 10 years, right? So I was like, oh, let's just make her a war veteran, 2 tours, not thinking that, hey, you should know how to, you should be able to hear the car pulling up. You should be able to,
Right.
all of these things that you should be able to know
Right.
and do.
All that did was remind me was that you are a rookie. you
Right.
are a
Absolutely.
so again, I'm not okay, we didn't put enough salt on the butter, so we can't even eat that no more. So salt butter on the popcorn, let the wrap.
Oh my gosh.
Fortunately, I think that's one of the hardest we've done on any salty butter spot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
we can't that's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
no, no, both of them are all everybody's a phenomenal actor because there's a lot of great actors that were in the movie,
Hmm.
but certain
Hmm.
things were, like you said, were over exaggerated that took away the effect of certain points that we can understand some level of duress, but if that duress was stretched out, it turned into a comic strip and it was horrible.
Absolutely.
But again,
Absolutely.
but the background of the movie, the message of the movie is that there's a constant threat and there's more than just one threat. There's a threat. There's the threat of race. There's a threat of our own community, and there's a threat to self.
Hmm.
Um, all of those were seen and shown in each part of the movie, and there's an overcoming fear of all because she showed it, Tyrese showed it, even Deacon showed it, even the dirty cop showed it.
Hmm.
Everybody showed it because they didn't want their dirt to be exposed and they wanted to keep their life the way that it was.
Right.
And so, and there was also change and positivity in the movie. Tyrese changed, uh, Officer West changed,
Hmm.
and it also shows us if we pursue with the right heart strong enough, even the biggest enemy will fall.
Yeah, they have to. They have to fall. Yes, yes, sir. So, listen. This was a great episode discussing Black and Blue. Next week we are going to be discussing Queen and Slim. All right, Queen and Slim. We've been on the black cinema tip these last couple of weeks. Give us a couple more weeks, and then we'll kind of branch out a little bit more.
Right.
All right,
Boy,
so make sure.
yeah.
Right, make sure that you watch that and be ready next week to discuss it as well. Again, you're watching us live on Facebook and on YouTube, so make sure that you like our Salty Butter Crew page on Facebook. Make sure that you also are subscribing to our YouTube page as well, to Popcorn Preachers. And of course, this podcast can be found where all podcasts are available. Thank you guys so much for listening. On behalf of my co host, DT, I am your host, Brian. You guys have a great day, and we will see you next week.
Bless you.